Imagine, just for a second, a cold, terrifying prehistoric night. The sun dips below the horizon and the savanna goes pitch black. I mean, literally, completely dark. For our earliest ancestors, that darkness meant extreme vulnerability. There were no streetlights, no locked doors, and definitely no glowing smartphone screens to distract them. Just the chilling, rustling sounds of predators prowling in the brush. Back then, we were essentially just another item on the menu, huddling together in the freezing dark, just waiting, hoping for dawn. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to look at the exact moment all of that changed forever.
Okay, let's dive into this. What is the single spark that literally separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom? Well, before we had sprawling cities, agriculture, or written language, we just had to survive. And survival was absolutely brutal. Early hominids spent nearly their entire waking day just chewing. Honestly, chewing. They had these massive jaws and enormous digestive tracts that were absolutely necessary to process raw, incredibly tough roots and raw meat. They had zero natural defenses against the biting cold and absolutely no way to stay safe when the sun went down. But then this incredible shift happened. A shift that actually literally altered our biology and the entire trajectory of our species. It all started with the flames.
Now, it's not like our early ancestors just magically invented a lighter one day, right? The control of fire was a really gradual, kind of convoluted process. It began with what anthropologists call opportunistic fire use. Basically, this means early hominids weren't making fire from scratch. They were scavenging it. Think about that. They would cautiously approach the smoldering aftermath of a scary lightning strike or a raging natural bushfire, carefully gather up the glowing residual embers and carry them back to places like Wonderworks Cave in South Africa. In fact, scientists have found microscopic traces of wood ash and burned bones deep inside that cave, providing hard evidence that this opportunistic scavenging was happening over 1 million years ago.
Let's move to the timeline and see how this builds. We have some hotly debated claims of fire control from about 2 million years ago in Africa, but the truly solid evidence, like that microscopic ash in Wonderwork Cave, sits right around the 1 million year mark. But here's the thing, scavenging fire is vastly different from creating it on demand. If a scavenged campfire went out during a random rainstorm, well, you were plunged right back into the freezing dark until the next wildfire happened to roll through. So the massive turning point in our history wasn't just using fire, it was the deliberate creation of it. And that brings us to a revolutionary discovery that completely rewrites our timeline.
Section 2. Striking the first spark. The East Farm Discovery.
In an extraordinary archaeological breakthrough from East Farm in England, published just recently in December 2025, Dr. Rob Davis, a British museum archaeologist who actually co-led the investigation, noted that the ability to create and control fire is one of the most important turning points in human history. And why is that? Because the excavations at East Farm suggest that early Neanderthals took control of the elements 400,000 years ago. This is a real game changer. This groundbreaking discovery pushes the timeline for deliberate firemaking back by over 350,000 years. It proves that our evolutionary cousins, the Neanderthals, mastered flames entirely independently, long before anatomically modern humans even set foot in Europe. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how they pulled it off. The secret ingredient wasn't magic, and it wasn't rubbing two sticks together. It was iron pyrite, commonly known as fool's gold. When you strike it sharply against flint, like the heat-shattered hand axes they found at the site, iron pyrite creates exceptionally bright, super hot sparks. But here's the truly amazing part. Pyrite isn't found naturally anywhere in the geological deposits around East Farm. This highly suggests these early human ancestors were hiking tens of kilometers to chalky coastal areas just to source this rare mineral. They were bringing it all the way back to their camps to use as a prehistoric fire-starting kit, pairing it with specialized tinder like wood scrapings.
Now you might be wondering, how do we know this wasn't just a random wildfire? To prove it, researchers used infrared spectroscopy and geomagnetism on the sediments at the site. They found that the earth right there was heated to over 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit. The chemical traces left behind, specifically polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which are basically the chemical signatures of burning, proved without a doubt that this was a deliberate, repeatedly used hearth. They were lighting these fires on purpose, over and over again. And having fire on demand didn't just keep them warm, it completely changed their physical bodies.
Section 3. How fire made us human. The cooking hypothesis.
Once we controlled the flame, it acted as a way to essentially pre-digest our food entirely outside of our bodies. Just look at these staggering numbers. This is the absolute core of the cooking hypothesis. When you cook food, the heat breaks down raw cellulose and tough proteins like collagen, making the nutrients incredibly easy for our bodies to digest.
Cooking starches improves our caloric energy intake by 12 to 35%. And for proteins, it's a massive 45 to 78% jump. Plus, cooking killed parasites and drastically lowered the toxicity of certain plants. Suddenly, almost overnight in evolutionary terms, early humans were getting vastly more energy for a fraction of the digestive effort, which completely skyrocketed our survival rates.
So, the crucial point is this incredible evolutionary trade-off. Our pre-fire diet required giant jaw muscles and massive, heavy digestive tracts just to process all that raw food. But once we started eating soft, cooked, high-calorie meals, we simply didn't need those large organs anymore. Our teeth shrank, our guts shrank, and because the digestive system is incredibly energy-hungry, shrinking it freed up massive amounts of spare metabolic energy. Now, where do you think all that extra energy went? It went straight to our heads. It fueled the growth of our massive, highly complex brains.
With these larger brains and the newfound mastery of the flame, fire quickly became our very first great engineering tool. Beyond just cooking dinner, it allowed early humans to actively ward off predators in the dark. It let hominids, who, remember, had lost their thick body hair, expand out of Africa and into freezing, previously uninhabitable climates across Europe and Asia. By 164,000 years ago, at a place called Pinnacle Point in South Africa, humans were even using fire to heat treat a specific rock called silkrete. They were literally altering its mechanical properties to craft incredibly sharp tools and early arrows. They also figured out how to smoke and dry meat, preserving food to survive the long, lean winter seasons.
Section 4. The original social network, gathering around the flame. We've talked a lot about biology and tools, but once the sun went down, fire catalyzed a profound shift in our social behavior too. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the number 16. In the animal kingdom, most primates go to sleep right at sundown. Their entire day is strictly dictated by the sun. But humans? We have a 16-hour modern waking day. The control of fire gave us artificial light which literally altered our natural circadian rhythms. It extended our day, allowing us to stay awake, alert, and active for hours after the sun had set.
And what exactly did we do with those extra hours of light? We gathered. The campfire became this safe, communal space. Maintaining a fire required teamwork, right? Gathering fuel, tending the embers, cooking the food. This allowed for larger groups to bond, including older individuals like grandparents who could now stick around and help care for the children. Staring into the flames, safe from the terrors of the dark, early humans shared food, fostered complex social hierarchies, and engaged in storytelling. In fact, many anthropologists firmly believe that this intense, nighttime social interaction around the hearth was a primary catalyst for the evolution of complex language itself.
Section 5. Our ancestral flame. The legacy of the spark.
The legacy of that first spark is literally all around us. The story of fire isn't just some ancient history lesson to memorize. It is the absolute foundation of everything we have built as a species. From those ancient Neanderthals striking iron pyrite in East Farm 400,000 years ago, there's a direct, unbroken line to the kilns of the first potters, the glowing forges of the Bronze Age, the steam engines of the Industrial Revolution, and yes, even the rockets that took us to space. All of human civilization is really just a continuation of mastering the flame. Which leaves us with this final thought. We take our beautifully illuminated world completely for granted today. But the next time you strike a match, ignite a stove, or simply flip a light switch to banish the shadows from your room, will you remember the ancient ancestors who conquered the dark? Their mastery of the spark didn't just keep them warm, it literally made us human. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep wondering, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.